You pulled away, and now she can't stop thinking about you. At first, she was convinced she had everything under control. She was the one in charge. She thought you'd be the one to chase after her, but instead, you disappeared without a trace. And that's when everything started to change. The power she thought she had slowly started slipping away, and now she's left second-guessing everything. Was there more to you than she realized? Was she ever really as important to you as she thought? The uncertainty is eating at her, and now she's over-analyzing every moment you spent together. What does it mean when you pulled back? Is she just another option, or could there be something deeper? Does she go after you now, or does she let you slip further away? Stay with me, because the next move you make will determine the course of everything. This is where the real shift happens, and you don't want to miss it. 1. The silent shift that changes everything. Most men have no idea just how powerful their absence can be. When you were constantly there, always texting, always calling, always making plans, she never had to question your feelings. She never had to wonder where she stood with you. You were like clockwork, always present, always predictable. But here's the harsh truth. Being predictable can drain the attraction out of any relationship. The real magic happens when you pull back. At first, she doesn't even notice the shift. She tells herself, he's probably just busy. Maybe he's tied up with work or something. He'll reach out when he has a chance. So she moves on with her day, thinking nothing's changed. But as time goes by, a few hours turn into a day, maybe even 2, and then suddenly, something feels off. She grabs her phone, checks for messages, but there's nothing. No texts, no calls, no updates from you. That's when the first spark of doubt flickers. She brushes it off at first. Maybe he's just caught up in something. It's no big deal. But as more time passes, the question starts nagging her more and more. Why hasn't he reached out yet? Did I say something wrong? Is he starting to lose interest? And that's when the shift hits her hard. Because when a woman starts questioning your intentions, you've already sparked a change in her mind. The more she wonders about you, the more she begins to miss you. And when that doubt sets in, it's only a matter of time before you're back on her mind, whether you intended it or not. The moment she starts wondering about you, that's when you've triggered the real power of your absence. 2. Why women always notice when you pull away. No matter how independent she seems, no matter how full her life is, and no matter how many other people surround her, she always notices when you pull back. But here's the thing, she won't show it at first. She'll play it cool. You'll see her posting on social media, smiling, hanging out with friends, acting like she's completely fine without you. She'll keep herself busy, keeping up appearances. She might even convince herself she doesn't need you. But deep down, she's paying attention. She's waiting for you to be the one to reach out. She expects you to check in, to see how she's doing, to make sure she knows that you still care. That's what most guys do. They can't handle the silence, and they panic. Thoughts race through their minds. What if she thinks I've lost interest? Maybe she's waiting for me to text. Should I just send a message? And the second they give in and reach out, the balance of power shifts back to her, because now she knows she still has you hooked. But when you don't reach out, when you remain silent and stick to your ground, that's when everything changes. Now it's no longer just about noticing your absence, it's about feeling it. She'll try to ignore it, maybe distract herself, but the doubts start to creep in. Why hasn't he reached out? Did I do something wrong? Is he seeing someone else? The same woman who once seemed so confident and in control now finds herself second-guessing everything. She starts questioning what you two really had. And that's when things get interesting, because once she's wondering about you, you've already sparked a change in her emotions. 3. The psychology of missing someone. Ever wondered why we only start to value something once it's no longer within reach? The answer is simple. The human brain craves uncertainty. When something or someone is always there, we tend to take it for granted. We assume it'll always be available, but the moment it's gone, everything changes. When you were always the one pursuing her, she never had to miss you. She never had to wonder if you were drifting away. You were a constant presence, and because of that, she didn't think twice about it. But now, with your absence, everything has shifted. Your silence creates a void, and that void forces her mind to start filling in the blanks. At first, she brushes it off. "I'm fine," she tells herself. She keeps herself busy, maybe even tries to forget about you. But then a song plays on the radio, and suddenly she's reminded of you. A familiar scent in the air takes her back to the last time she saw you. A conversation with a friend somehow brings your name into the mix. And that's when it hits her. Slowly, without her even realizing it, she starts to feel that pull. Her curiosity grows. Her mind is reigniting old emotions, bringing you back into focus. And before she knows it, she can't stop thinking about you. What once seemed insignificant now has her attention in ways she never expected. And the more she tries to ignore it, the stronger it gets. The truth is, your absence has done exactly what was needed to spark that desire again. 4. When she starts watching you from a distance now, things are about to get really interesting. She won't make the first move. Why? Because she doesn't want to seem vulnerable. She doesn't want to admit that she's missing you. Instead, she starts observing you from afar. She's checking your social media regularly, keeping an eye on your activity. She knows when you're online, and she pays close attention to who you're interacting with. The more she watches, the more questions flood her mind. Who's he talking to? Why does he seem so unaffected? Is he moving on without me? Even though she's not reaching out, don't be fooled. She's thinking about you constantly. She might even start posting things that she hopes will catch your attention. Maybe a photo that reminds you of her, or a song lyric that feels a little too personal, or a story that seems to speak directly to you without actually saying it. And here's the kicker: if you don't respond to any of it, that's when she starts to feel the pressure. The silence is the trigger that sends her into a bit of a panic. She may not show it, but inside she's wondering if you've truly moved on. The longer you stay silent, the more the tension builds. 5. What happens when you stay silent? This is where most men go wrong. They get through a few days of no contact and then, out of nowhere, they break. They tell themselves she's just waiting for them to make the first move, so they send that casual message. "Hey, how's everything?" And just like that, they hand over the power. In that moment, she knows she still has you wrapped around her finger. But here's the secret. When you remain silent, when you hold your ground and don't give in, the dynamic shifts. That's when things really start to change. She begins to feel that nagging sense of regret. She starts wondering if she made the wrong decision. Maybe she underestimated you. Maybe you're not like the other guys who just can't handle the silence. As the days go on, she feels the weight of her choice. That's when she starts to make her move. She might go back and like an old post, hoping to get your attention. She could reply to a story you posted, testing to see how you'll respond. Maybe she'll find a reason, any reason, to text you, just to see where things stand. No matter what form it takes, she'll find a way to test the waters. Why? Because now the roles are reversed. She's the one chasing you. The power has shifted, and now it's her turn to wonder where she stands. 6. The emotional roller coaster begins. At first, she tells herself it's nothing. Oh, he'll come back. He always does. She convinces herself that she's in control, that distancing herself was the right decision. She believes everything is fine, and you'll reach out when the time is right. But as days go by, something starts to feel off. She expected you to make the first move. She thought you'd be the one working harder to get back in touch. But instead, there's nothing, just silence. And that's when the emotional roller coaster begins, and it's one she didn't see coming. At first, she tries to explain it away. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he just needs some space. It's normal. He'll definitely reach out soon. But as the days stretch into weeks and she hears nothing from you, the confidence she once had starts to waver. The questions start to creep in. Did I push him away too much? Has he found someone else? Is he completely done with me? The more she thinks about it, the more those doubts start to gnaw at her. What she doesn't realize is that the confusion is turning into frustration. Frustration because for the first time, she's not the one in control. She's used to being the one with the answers, the one who doesn't have to wonder. But now she's in uncharted territory, feeling uncertain, feeling lost, and for the first time, feeling the emotional distance from someone who was once always there. And that's when the panic starts to set in. 7. The moment she starts testing. You women rarely admit when they miss you. Why? Because pride can be a huge barrier. No one wants to be the first to show vulnerability, to give the other person that kind of power. Instead of reaching out directly, she'll start testing you in subtle ways. Here's how this plays out. She may suddenly start liking your old posts, not just one but a few here and there, trying to gauge your reaction. She might share vague quotes or stories that seem tailored just for you, hoping that you'll notice and make a move. Maybe, out of nowhere, you'll receive a random message like, "Hey, do you still have that jacket I left at your place?" It seems like an innocent question, but it's a way for her to test the waters and see if you're paying attention. She might even accidentally run into you, acting like it's just a coincidence, but deep down, she's orchestrating the encounter to gauge how you'll respond. And here's the critical part. None of this is accidental. Every move is deliberate, designed to see if you'll take the bait. What happens next is key. Most men fail this test the moment it's thrown at them. They don't realize the subtle game that's being played. When she drops the breadcrumb, they jump at it, replying too fast, getting excited, thinking her attention means she wants them back. They overthink and over-explain, doing exactly what she expects. And when that happens, she wins, because she now knows she still has the power to get a reaction from you. But if you don't take the bait, if you don't respond the way she's hoping, something inside her begins to shift. If you stay cool, stay distant, and don't show desperation or need for reassurance, she'll realize you're not easily controlled. And that's when she starts questioning herself. She begins wondering if she's the one who miscalculated, and the dynamic begins to change in your favor. 8. The realization that hits her. Hard. As time goes on, something within her starts to shift. The longer you stay distant, the louder the thoughts in her mind become. She begins to replay every conversation, every moment, questioning her own choices. She starts to wonder if she made a mistake, if pulling away was the right thing to do. And then, like a sudden wave, it hits her. You actually pulled away. At first, she thought it was all part of a game, something you were doing to get a reaction or wait for the perfect moment to come back. She assumed you were just playing your cards, waiting for the right time to reappear. But as the silence stretches on, it finally dawns on her. This isn't a game anymore. You've truly detached. And that realization completely shifts her perception of you. No longer does she see you as the guy who's always there when she needs you. You're not the predictable, reliable one anymore. You're not someone who requires her validation to feel secure. Now, she sees you as someone slipping away, someone she might lose if she doesn't act. And here's the thing. Women chase what they feel they're losing. In that moment, she starts to feel the urgency. The idea that she could lose you is more powerful than she ever expected. And that's when things get interesting, because now the chase begins, and this time she's the one running after you. 9. The fear of losing you sets. In this is the phase that most men never get to witness, and here's why. They never give the woman enough space to truly feel it. The moment most men sense her pulling away, they rush in. They over-text, they over-explain their feelings, trying to win her back. But if you can resist that urge, if you actually stay detached and hold your ground, that's when something powerful begins to unfold. At first, it starts as just a nagging thought in her mind. Maybe he's just being stubborn. It's easy for her to brush it off, but as time passes, it turns into frustration. Why isn't he texting me back? Why isn't he trying? And that frustration slowly builds into something much deeper. Fear. The fear starts creeping in. Wait, is he really done with me? And that fear is a force like no other. Because once a woman starts to believe she's losing something valuable, something rare, that's when she becomes willing to do whatever it takes to get it back. She may try to downplay it, she might even ignore her own feelings at first, but deep down, she knows she can't afford to let go of something, or someone, that could slip away forever. 10. The power of staying unavailable. This is where most men make a crucial mistake. The moment she reaches out, they cave. They respond right away. They tell her how much they missed her, and they act like nothing ever happened. But here's the thing, when you give in that quickly, she wins. Why? Because now she knows she never really lost you. You were just waiting for her to come around. But if you can resist that urge, if you remain unavailable and don't rush back in at the first sign of interest, that's when the power dynamic truly shifts. Now she has to work harder to get your attention. She starts putting in effort, showing that she values your time and presence. She begins proving herself to you in ways she never had to before. And as she does this, something unexpected happens. She becomes the one who's unsure. She's the one who starts questioning whether you're truly still interested or if she's losing you. The tables turn, and now she's the one who has to chase you. She starts to realize that she wants you more than she thought, more than she's willing to admit. The more she has to earn your attention, the more she craves it. 11. The subconscious shift in her mind. There's something shifting inside her, and she hasn't fully realized it yet. In the beginning, you were just a passing thought, a fleeting presence she occasionally thought about. She assumed it was just a momentary feeling, something that would fade over time. But the more time that passes, the more your absence weighs on her mind. She wakes up, grabs her phone, and without even thinking, she checks for a message from you. She goes through her day, doing her best to stay busy, but your absence lingers in the back of her mind. She might be out with friends, laughing, sharing a moment, but there's a subtle emptiness she can't ignore. It's not intentional, it's something far deeper. When you were always around, she took your presence for granted. In her mind, you were just always there. Someone reliable, someone constant. But once you pull away, once you detach yourself entirely, her mental framework starts to unravel. And that's when the space you left behind becomes impossible to ignore. It forces her to rethink everything. Was he always the one with the control? Was he stronger than I gave him credit for? Did I completely misjudge the situation? Those thoughts start to plague her, and she can't help but doubt herself. She starts questioning her own judgment, and that doubt creates a shift within her, one she didn't expect. Here's the kicker. The moment she begins to question herself is the moment her attachment to you deepens. Why? Because now you've become an enigma, a mystery she feels compelled to solve. And let's face it, mysteries, they're impossible to resist. 12. when she starts overcompensating. She's now in uncharted territory, caught between what she feels and what her ego won't allow her to admit. Her emotions are starting to take over, but she's too proud to let anyone, especially you, see it. So what does she do? She begins to overcompensate in every way she can. How? She starts to convince herself and everyone around her that she's fine. She might suddenly become more active on social media, posting more pictures, flooding her feed with selfies, and sharing every fun moment. She goes out more, hanging with friends, acting like she's having the time of her life. But here's the catch. All of this is a performance. It's designed for your eyes only. She might even start talking to other guys, even if she's not really interested, just to show that she's moved on. She could make sure you see her looking carefree and unbothered whenever you're around. She wants you to notice, to think she's perfectly fine without you. But here's the truth. It's all a tactic to get a reaction from you. She's hoping that you'll see her with someone else and feel a pang of jealousy. She's hoping that when you see her posting all these perfect moments, you'll reach out, maybe even break your silence. If you do, she wins. She knows she still has power over your emotions. But if you stay completely detached, if you don't react to her attempts to trigger you, that's when things really begin to unravel for her. Because deep down, the one thing she can't handle is the silence. And when you don't engage, you're taking back control, making her question everything she thought she knew. 13. The moment she finally breaks. No matter how strong her exterior may seem, every woman has a breaking point. You can only push her so far before the walls she's built start to crumble. At first, she tells herself she's fine. She convinces herself that she's in control, that your absence doesn't bother her. But here's the thing, frustration only goes so far. Eventually it transforms into something deeper, actual longing. And here's the truth that many men overlook. Women don't truly miss you when you're still around, chasing after them, begging for their attention. They miss you when you've completely disappeared, when you've withdrawn from their world entirely. That's when the realization hits. You're no longer there to give her reassurance, and that's when she starts to feel the absence. If you've remained silent long enough, if you've genuinely distanced yourself from her life, the inevitable will happen. She will break. For some, it takes a few weeks, maybe even just days. For others, it might take months. But sooner or later, she reaches her breaking point. She'll find a way to reach out, whether it's a seemingly casual text like, "Hey, hope you're doing okay," or an accidental call she didn't mean to make. She might show up somewhere she knows you'll be, pretending it's all a coincidence. But make no mistake, it's never random. This is her final attempt to pull you back into her world on her terms. She's trying to test the waters, to see if you'll come back to her when she makes the first move. And here's the most crucial part. How you respond in that moment will decide everything. 14. What happens if you react? Too soon. Most men fail this crucial final test. The moment she reaches out, excitement takes over. They think it's their chance to win her back, so they drop everything. They respond too quickly, shower her with attention, and let her slip back into their world without any hesitation. But here's the problem. The moment you react like that, you've already lost the upper hand. Why? Because once you respond too eagerly, the power dynamic immediately shifts back in her favor. She realizes she doesn't have to chase you anymore. She knows she can get your attention whenever she wants. And with that realization comes a sudden shift in her feelings. The excitement she felt during the silence, the curiosity, the longing, starts to fade away. Why? Because you've just made yourself predictable again, and when you're predictable, she knows exactly what to expect from you. Once that predictability kicks in, the thrill is gone, and so is her desire to pursue you. She's no longer motivated to chase after you, because she knows you'll always be there when she needs you. But if you handle it differently, if you don't rush in and instead keep your distance just a little longer, that's when the real chase begins. When you resist the urge to immediately give in, when you stay composed and let her work for your attention, you flip the dynamic completely. Now, she has to prove herself to you. 15. How to keep the power and make her chase. So, how should you respond when she finally reaches out? The answer is simple. Stay detached. This doesn't mean ignoring her or playing games. You don't want to come off as childish or petty, but you also don't want to appear desperate. The key is balance. When she texts, wait before replying. Don't jump to respond immediately. Keep your replies short and to the point. If she asks how you've been, keep it brief. Don't open the door for long conversations. And if she tries to pull you into a deeper discussion, remember, you control the pace now. You decide when and how to engage. Most importantly, don't go back to the way things were. Don't slip into the same patterns of constant communication and reassurance. Instead, set the tone. You've redefined the relationship dynamics. Now, she has to work to earn your attention. She has to prove she's worthy of your time. Because at this point, the roles have completely reversed. You're no longer the one seeking her validation. She's the one seeking yours. And that shift, that's when you've truly gained the upper hand. Now that you understand how pulling away changes everything, you might be wondering, what's next? If you want to make sure she stays hooked and keeps chasing,